expressed on the following program are those of the host and not necessarily those of staff, management, or ownership.
Phoenix, Arizona, Brother Mike, back on the radio, hardcore. HardcoreChristianity.com. Welcome to the program today. This one you're not going to believe. ISIS, the first door to the Antichrist. You won't want to miss this radio program today. You better call somebody quickly and tell them the radio program's on. I'm going to give you a totally different perspective on the war in Iraq than you've never heard it before. You'll never hear it again. Shocking information out of the prophecy of the great Daniel the prophet and ISIS. This is Brother Mike. Hey, I'm the counselor at the House of Healing. Oh, I'm in my 34th year. That's a long time, isn't it? That's longer than some of you have been alive. That makes me a senior citizen. Welcome to the program. On the website, HardcoreChristianity.com, you'll see all the information about our ministry. For example, our services are Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday night's Ladies' Night, Healing, Teaching, and Deliverance. Thursday night is the individual, personal, and direct prayer for healing and deliverance for everyone who comes to the service. Friday night's my teaching service for my radio listeners. Please come early and get a seat. While you're at the website, why don't you join us on Facebook? Why don't you join up with our teaching channel on YouTube? Why don't you sign up for a free seminar coming up next month? You can listen to the radio show anytime you want to. SoundCloud.com/Hardcore Christianity. You can pick it up on the website 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Please hit the PayPal button when you come. Even small donations help us out. Fantastic. 20, 25, 50, that kind of thing. Prays for a radio show here and a radio show there. It works out great. I don't take a salary, so I don't have to have a huge amount of money coming in. But if you care about this program, you want to see this type of program on the air, you need to sow some seed into it. ISIS. Oh my God. What happened? Well, let me put the perspective on it for you. Folks, this you ain't going to believe. This you ain't going to believe. I'm not even kidding. As you know, this war in Iraq is the biggest boondoggle America's ever stepped in. I mean, both feet stepped in it, scraping it off with sticks, since the Vietnam War. This is the biggest fiasco I've ever laid my eyes on, with the exception of the Vietnam War. In the history of my life, I'm a senior citizen. I've never seen anything this bad except Vietnam. We lost over 50,000 soldiers in Vietnam. That was incomprehensibly disgraceful for a war for nothing. And now we're doing it again in Iraq. But here's the situation. This one has prophetic ramifications. Here's what happens. The entire Middle East is in turmoil, and it's caused by Muslims. But you got to figure out what kind of Muslim is causing it. Because if you don't understand the difference between a Shia Muslim and a Sunni Muslim, we're going to be in a world of hurt. We're going to be in a world of hurt. It's like, for example, Catholicism. If you say to somebody, well, what's your religion? They go, I'm Catholic. That doesn't mean anything, because you got to figure out what kind of Catholic there are. There's all kinds of different Catholics. Well, it's even more pronounced in Protestantism. For example, if you say, are you a Protestant? You say, yes, that means nothing. Because if you compare, let's say, a Southern Baptist with a Holy Roller Pentecostal, they may have several things that they agree on doctrinally, but in practice, they're very different. And Islam is broken down into two groups, Shias and Sunnis. Shias and Sunnis. And these two groups hate each other. And when you've got Bush and Obama running a war in Iraq, who are the equivalent of what, to use a medieval term, the two village idiots, the reason this war has failed so miserably boils down to religion, and it boils down to the differences and the hatred between Sunni Muslims, who are in the worldwide majority, and Shia Muslims, who were in the localized majority in Iran and Iraq. If you look around the Middle East real quickly, Sunni Muslims are much more popular than Shia Muslims. The Sunni Muslims are the strict Muslims, and the Shia Muslims are more like the liberal ones in a way. It'd be kind of like Republicans and Democrats in this crazy country. You've got Republicans who tend to be a little more conservative, and they don't like Democrats because they're more liberal. Well, the Muslims have the same problem we do. So what happened was Bush goes in there with his thumb stuck in his ear, and then Obama takes over the war with his thumb stuck in the other ear, and nobody knows that none of this is going to work. And the reason it's not going to work, and you're not going to be able to set up a democracy, is because Sunnis and Shias hate each other. And they left the whole mess in charge of a guy named Maliki, who was a Shia Muslim. But Saddam Hussein was a Sunni Muslim. And the Sunnis were in the minority in Iraq. But Iraq was governed by Sunni Muslims. And they were tortured by Saddam and his two sons. Well, they left this other crackpot named Maliki. This psycho was left in charge of Iraq when Obama, not knowing what he was doing, having no clue what was going on, pulled all the troops out. The troops that never should have been in there in the first place. Maliki, who was a Shia Muslim, had most of his family executed, tortured, or murdered by Saddam and his two sons. So Maliki decides to get some payback, and he starts exterminating Sunni Muslims. In the meantime, the Arab Spring is breaking out in Egypt and now in Syria, and civil war starts in Syria, and the whole Middle East is in total turmoil now. So the Sunnis start uprising in Iraq, and they are made up basically of Sunni Muslims and Baaths from Saddam's political party. And now the Sunnis moved into Syria, and incredibly within 12 months had completely reorganized their system and their organization. And now we're at massive strength after only 12 months. And the irony of this whole thing is Bush went in there to get Saddam because Saddam tried to kill his dad. And the irony of this whole thing is ISIS is a combination of Sunni Muslims, Ba'ath Party specialists, and Saddam Hussein, his military people. And Saddam basically is having the last laugh in Iraq. And that's the incredible irony of it. But the Sunni-Shia war is not going to end. Right now, for example, in Syria, the country is mostly Sunnis, but it's run by Assad, who is a Shia. And the Shias hate the Sunnis, and the Sunnis hate the Shias. The Democrats, they hate the Republicans. Republicans hate the Democrats. And they're going to get it on because they don't get along. And right now, Iraq and Iran are mostly Shia. But the outlining countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, and so on, some of the others, are mostly Sunni Muslims. And in Syria, you've got the Sunni uprising, you got the Kurd uprising, and you got Assad, who is a Shia, trying to murder everybody, and the Sunnis don't want to take it anymore. And so ISIS is now going to go after Syria and take over them after they're finished taking over Iraq. But here's what's really interesting about it. In Daniel chapter 7 and in Daniel chapter 8, we have an incredible series of revelations. And it is literally spectacular. If you've never read these prophecies in Daniel, they do seem a little confusing when you read them, but they are spectacular to say the least. But check this out. In Daniel chapter 7, it was revealed by the great prophet that the Antichrist was going to come from somewhere in the 10 kingdoms inside the old Roman Empire. And then in Daniel 8, he reveals that the Antichrist, or the little horn, is going to come out of one of the 4 divisions of the old Roman Empire And that is Greece, Turkey, Syria, or Egypt. So we kind of know that the Antichrist is coming out of one of these 4 countries. It could have been any of the 10 if we didn't have Daniel chapter 8. But since we do, it's been reduced to 4 countries. And then in Daniel chapter 11, from verse 36 to the end of the book, it talks about the future and what the Antichrist is going to do and how he takes over the Middle East and how he conquers 7 of the 10 kingdoms through war and how he conquers Egypt. And the indication is in Daniel chapter 11 that he comes from Syria or Greece. If you look at the current layout of the Middle East, it looks like he's going to be a Syrian because ISIS has regenerated their organization and Saddam Hussein's people have regenerated and Al-Qaeda has regenerated because they're all Sunni Muslims. These people are now the most vicious, cold-blooded medieval killers we have ever seen. And they're going to rise out of where? Syria. They're coming out of Syria. And what looks like is going to happen now is that ISIS is going to take over Iraq, or most of it, at least half of it. And then they're going to take over most of, if not all of Syria, and they're going to chop Assad's head off and all the other Shia Muslims, which they hate. And the entire region is going to fall under, in whole or part, to this incredible war machine, ISIS. But here's what's interesting. If the Antichrist comes out of Syria, which it seems like he does if you look at Daniel chapter 11, and he is the ruler of the north that goes to the ruler of the south and conquers Egypt, which seems likely as Egypt is in total turmoil now, and they are mostly Sunni Muslims as well. It looks like the Antichrist is going to rise very soon, and these signs of the times are spectacular, and Jesus spoke about them. Wars and rumors of wars, nations against nations, famines, pestilences, earthquakes. Listen, friend, you need to make some major changes in your life, and you need to change your Christian walk now before this thing is too late. We are staring at Bible prophecy coming to life right before our eyes, and this is for real. You need to repent and change as a Christian now. You need to learn spiritual warfare, and you need to be ready for the end.
The views expressed on the preceding program are those of the host and not necessarily those of staff, management, or ownership. This program has been sponsored by Michael W. Smith.